it's my honor to introduce the first session today. The session topic is called Security and Resilience. I think security and resilience is getting more and more critical and important in the internet infrastructures. And we are quite lucky to have two speakers here. The first one actually is Charles Mok, and the second one is Kenny Huang. And who will give a talk first? Okay, Charles. So let me introduce the Charles Mok. Charles Mok. Wait a minute. I know him, but I don't know his resume quite well. Charles is a research scholar in the Global Digital Policy Incubator of the, wow, this is long title, no? Cyber Policy Center at Stanford University. And also is a member of the trustee for Internet Society. Wow, you have too many titles, huh? Another board member for International Center for Trade, Transparency, and Monitoring. And Charles, served as an elected member of the Legislature Council in Hong Kong Special Administration Region. No more, right?
No more. I am no more.
Okay, from 2012 and to 2020. And in the 2021, he found the technical for the Good Asia and initiative of the advocates the positive use of the technology for business and civil community. And also is an entrepreneur, was a co-founder of HKNet in 1994. And so, and I should pass for you to give, for you to make a presentation.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you very much, and good to see you all this morning. I am going to talk about, if you can help me bring up my slide, please. I am going to talk about a paper that I recently co-wrote with, thank you. That I recently co-wrote with Kenny. So I am going to be introducing what we are trying to talk about in that paper, which is about Taiwan's, okay, great. Which is about the critical infrastructure of Taiwan, especially talking about the undersea cable resilience. This is a topic that I think is getting a lot of attention within Taiwan, but also internationally in recent years. So I was very fortunate to have the opportunity. Kenny, he'll be speaking next, but he obviously is a key player in Taiwan in this particular area. And we believe that this is a topic that needs further attention, both domestically in Taiwan as well as internationally. Now, if you can go online, you can search for this particular website. Maybe I should have put a QR code on there, but anyway, you can just Google and find this paper and download it and give us your comment. Now, what is the, sorry, I have to look at the slide. Move here?
Yeah, you can move here. That will be easy.
Oh, down, yeah, go down.
Yeah.
Yeah, that might be easier. Yeah. When we talk about undersea cable, sometimes I tend to think that especially those users that are using the internet for the last 10, 20 years, and then they think about the internet like everything is wireless. It's in the air, but people actually forget that if you are accessing a website that is from, let's say, from another country, from another continent, you inevitably, you would have the traffic would have passed through undersea cable. So there are statistics. You see that people are saying that either 95 or even 99% of the internet traffic, especially if you're talking about intercontinental traffic, or even domestic traffic, which is a topic that I think Kenny can talk about too. Even if you go from a website in Taiwan, A, to go to a website in B in Taiwan, there's a possibility that you might be actually going offshore and come back because of just the configuration of the internet itself. So undersea cable is actually very important, even though people tend to just use wireless internet and forget about the wires these days. And Taiwan is actually connected to the world via more than 15 undersea cable systems that provide more than 100 terabit per second internet connectivities to all the users in Taiwan. And very important as well, Taiwan internet penetration is very high in terms of countries' advanced economies in Asia. So for Taiwan and for the world, especially also because Taiwan is an important economic player in Asia as well as in the world, particularly people talk about semiconductor resilience and so on these days. So Taiwan is actually very important in terms of the global supply chain and the economic activities. So Taiwan must be kept online. But today, I think it's not just an issue that Taiwan is facing. This is only within the last half a year, or news from different parts of the world facing issues of undersea cable disruptions. It could be because of. Okay, cute. It could be because of natural disaster like the volcanic eruption in the South Pacific. So many of the islands, obviously, if you're an island country, well, even smaller island country, but Taiwan is also an island country. But if you are a even smaller island country like in the South Pacific, you would be very severely disrupted if there is a natural disaster. But there are also many unnatural disruptions that had happened in the last year. These are just some of the examples. Well, for Taiwan, people always, people would always obviously remember the domestic cable disruption in the Matsu Island in Taiwan. But I think more importantly, if you look at the global situation, many different countries are facing this issue from all parts of the world. We had incidents in the Nordic, around between Sweden, Estonia, that were the cable, as well as actually other cables, the electricity and the oil cable were also disrupted because of a ship that was actually a Chinese ship that was passing through the region. So that was the Nordic. We had situations in the Red Sea during the the Middle East conflict that's ongoing right now. We had the Red Sea also facing the cable disruption. East Africa was also a recent occurrence, as well as even Vietnam. And Vietnam actually faced, actually in that particular case a few months ago, the majority of the undersea cable system connecting the country were actually disrupted. So as we go on, you will see that this is going to be a more and more severe problem that's facing the South China Sea. Okay. And quickly, I want to also talk about the geopolitical realignment of the undersea cable system around this region, and particularly including East Asia as well as Southeast Asia. In the old days, when I was in the internet industry, I still remember that we would be always talking about 3 data center hubs in East Asia. That would mean that they are actually Japan, Hong Kong, and then Singapore. So the concept is that if you have a undersea cable system, trans-Pacific, coming from the US West Coast, you would first go to Japan, and then you come down to Hong Kong, and then you come down to Singapore. That is the normal route, right? It's like a highway, because you want to pass through the hubs, the most economically vibrant economies. So you get the most traffic, you get the most business, right? because these cables are primarily or even exclusively commercially invested. But because in recent years, there are more and more problems with this particular route. First, Hong Kong since 2019 was basically placed under very strict scrutiny by the US government. If they want to invest, if US companies want to invest any cable connecting to Hong Kong, basically it will all be rejected by the US government. So that affects the situation in Hong Kong very severely. And Hong Kong is pretty much in the middle of this particular traffic route. Second, between Hong Kong and Singapore, you have to go through the South China Sea. And that particular region is increasingly problematic. If you are a company and you want to invest in a cable that goes through the South China Sea, and many of these cables is one of the most condensed area of, concentrated area of cables in the world. But if you want to do that, surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, you have to get you have to apply to the Chinese government to get approval. Well, you can't really argue with China to say who owns the South China Sea. So you better apply and get the green light. Otherwise, you don't know what's going to happen, right? So many companies try to do that, and you will be faced with severe delays and so on. So what's happening right now is that many of these cables are rerouting themselves to go around the area. They go to Guam, and then they might go to the Philippines. They might route themselves out down through the southern part of the Southeast Asia region, like Indonesia and Malaysia, and go back up to Singapore. Which means that if you are countries such as Japan and such as Taiwan, you have to consider what you will need to do in order to get new cable investment. Japan obviously doing something about it. We know that they are trying to even discuss with like Nordic countries and Canada and so on, and try to go through to connect, instead of the North America, connect that way through the Arctic over to Europe. So for the case of Taiwan, what can we do? Now, every time people think about, we have problems with undersea cable, we have to go with satellite. But that may or may not be a good option. Particularly for Taiwan, I think the biggest problem is, as we know, the most advanced low Earth orbit satellite system right now in operation in the world belongs to Mr. Elon Musk, and he owns this Starlink company, right? But in this particular interview from the Financial Times about a year and a half ago, he expressly said that he was told by the Chinese government not to provide Starlink services to Taiwan. He didn't really say whether he will follow that. I don't know whether it's an order or a recommendation, but he didn't say, but he told the reporter that he got this particular request from a Chinese official. And because of the fact that he has huge investment with his with Tesla and so on in China, I think it's safe to say that Starlink might not be a very reliable option for Taiwan. And what is Taiwan government doing about this particular issue of digital resilience? And basically, this is from the website of the Ministry of Digital Affairs. You can see that they are talking about, they're talking about fixing the problem or trying to mitigate this problem by improving land-based communications. That means domestically within Taiwan, within the island. Maritime communications, which means undersea cables and so on. But it's not very clear what they are doing in particular, other than, we want to improve the resilience and expand the international cable coverage and so on, and landing stations and so on. So they're doing something about it. And also they're saying that they're going to explore the satellite as an option for backup. And I think it's a proper way to put it, because satellite can only be a backup. You still need the higher capacity undersea cables. So what is Taiwan doing about this satellite? This is what the Taiwan government has announced, that they are going to plan to launch satellites starting from 2026. But 2026 means that that's at least 2 years from now. And as we all know, it takes a long time to build your own LEO network. And Starlink started very early. And of course, we believe that Taiwan is also trying to work with other European partners or even other American satellite options, or maybe Japanese satellite network options. But obviously, these are still playing catch up to Starlink. So it will take time. And for Taiwan itself, if it's going to send satellites up to the sky and build its own network, is also playing catch up. And of course, China has said that they will want to build a network that is going to be bigger than Starlink and so on. So everybody is trying to do that. It's going to be expensive, and it's going to be taking a long time. So in our paper, what did we recommend? I want to jump to the recommendations because of time. But I think one area that oftentimes when we think about undersea cable and satellite and so on, we tend to omit the fact that, in fact, I think in Taiwan, when the Metsu cable disruption happened, people sort of awoke to the fact that it takes a long time to repair these cables. 2 weeks? Yeah, 2 weeks, you're lucky. And this is actually happening all over the world, like I mentioned, Vietnam, East Africa, and so on. It takes a long time. Why? You ask why? Well, because this is a very niche industry. The ships, the repair ships, very highly skilled people, and it's dominated by a very small number of companies. The 4 biggest companies doing this is one American company, one Japanese company, and one French company, and then one Chinese company that is part of Huawei. So these are all the players. And they mostly invest in laying the undersea cable, which is quite a bit more lucrative than repair. You know, just like buying your iPhone. you want to buy, oh, okay, if it breaks, I want to buy a new iPhone. You go to repair it. Nobody wants to repair it, right? Undersea cable, you have to repair it. But not a lot of companies are investing in repairing it. So typically, we do see that we need to focus a little bit more on thinking about investigating and examining whether or not we can improve the validity of building a domestic cable repair industry in Taiwan. And I think either within Taiwan or working with the partners in the region, not forgetting that besides China being the biggest shipbuilding country in the world, actually Japan, Korea, and Taiwan are all within the top 5 or 6 countries. So by working with the regional partners, is it economically viable to create a domestic ship repair business? Maybe the dreaded word of subsidies may come in, that you need to do something like that between these countries in the region. And there's also one example that we cited in the paper, that the largest US company in this area, actually in shipbuilding and cable building and cable repair, that particular company actually opened up a satellite repair center in the Philippines. Can they do something similar for Taiwan? Or maybe serving the Taiwan-Japanese region? That is the question that we were asking. Second, I think we need to consider making smarter investment in Taiwan's satellite capabilities. How much should you invest in terms of the expensive network that you build that is inevitably going to be quite small? compared to the leading companies in the world because you started late and so on. How much should you invest in your own? How much should you be working with partners from around the world? And number three, again, seeking wider coordination and cooperation with regional partners. And I would be talking about mainly Japan, maybe even Korea and the Philippines. You are all under the same zone of issues that you commonly deal with. And these are, well, at least for the Philippines for the time being, but at least also for Japan and South Korea, you are sort of the allies of democracy in the region. So how much can you explore working together in that way? And number four, this is an area that maybe I don't know, Kuowei or Kenny can help discuss a little bit. Do you need to escalate the domestic policy making level about infrastructure resilience to a higher level in the government? Right now, if you, the way that I look at it from an outsider point of view, a lot of the decisions seems to be spread out in multiple different ministries and not really coordinated as well as an outsider can see at the highest government level. So that is another question that we suggest. One of the solutions may be setting up a multi-stakeholder expert group on digital resilience to engage more from the users, not necessarily, well, maybe including civil society, but more, I would think actually very importantly, the major businesses, the major industry representatives, because they have a stake. They may not realize it yet. The domestic major financial players, the semiconductor industry, right? These days, you see it in the US, who are the biggest investors in undersea cable? They are no longer the telecom companies. They are AWS, Microsoft, Google, Meta, companies like that. You may say that you don't have the equivalent of platform companies like that in Taiwan, maybe, or maybe 9, I don't know. It's that Japanese company. But what about even TSMC? They have enough money. They have all the money in the world, right? But it is important for them as well. Maybe they should play a role in terms of facilitating some investment. So this is, I think, the area that I would suggest looking into. Of course, establishing the cybersecurity standard practice for the cable industry to better protect the cable systems. And yeah, I mentioned that actually already. Incentivizing more investment in the undersea cable infrastructure. Traditionally, as I said, it was done by the telecom companies. But in Taiwan, in my impression, compared to other major players in the region, like Hong Kong, Singapore, or Japan, and so on, the investment and the participation in these undersea cable consortium from Taiwan is actually smaller than many of these other major economies in Asia. So is that an area that needs to, and when you talk about investment, you cannot force companies to make investment. How do you incentivize them? That is a big question, but I think it needs more discussion and focus by the Taiwan government. And finally, I think this is one area that Kenny is going to help talk about more too, is formulating a gray zone aggression mitigation strategy. In this paper, some people may ask us, well, what needs to be done? What should be done when there is a, let's say, a military exercise, or people always talk about the blockade and so on. We didn't look too deeply into this area in this particular paper. We're sort of looking at the basic prevention or the preparation that the government and the industry needs to take before we get to an issue or facing a blockade or whatever. But it's fair to ask that question. And what we are proposing is that the government and the related sectors should consider setting up such a mitigation strategy. And I hope maybe Kenny can help me talk a little bit more about this. So this is, yep. Yep, this is what we proposed or what we stated in our paper. I hope that it can be a starting point to initiate some further meaningful, useful discussion. So turn the time back to you, Guowei. Thank you.
Actually, I look at your question and your recommendation. I think I have all the answer already. Okay. The answer actually is next to me. It's Kenny Huang. Kenny Huang can answer all your questions. Okay, let me introduce the second speaker. Dr. Kenny Huang is currently chairing the working group for the recommendation policy for the selection of IDN, country code, and the top-level domain name, and common CCPDP4. He also is a co-chair of the Chinese generation panel. But it's kind of funny, this is not related to resilience, right?
It is.
It is, okay. And then, of course, Kenny was interested in the IDN for many, many years, from the very beginning, and also he's published several of the IDN RFC in the IETF. And of course, he's a leading expert, particularly in the security and resilience. So that's the reason I say, Charles, if you have any question, he can answer you. Kenny, it's your hand.
Okay, thank you, Guowei. And also thank you, Charles, for introducing the publication that we published. I'm Kenny Huang, chair of APNIC and chair of TWIGF. Basically, Charles has already covered everything I tried to address. So let's make my slide much easier. And can you move down to, can I have a controller? Oh, okay, right. Okay, so as I mentioned, Charles already covered the most important topic. So what I try to bring up is some supplemental slide to complete the information that probably you request for. And basically, that's a slide introduced the global undersea cable. For example, like the sea cable, basically, all the sea cable route is laid parallel along with the equator. Sorry for people from south, from like Australia, or from Wellington, from Brisbane. Sorry, I didn't try to ignore the cable connecting to Australia or any Pacific island, but majority trunk, basically this is parallel, go with the equator. So the one example is the sea cable connecting to Europe from Asia. Actually, you need to go through state. So one thing particularly interested, that means the sea cable need to, from Asia to Europe, I couldn't say Asia, to North Asia to Europe, need to be regulated by United States telecommunication regulation, and also regulated by United National Security regulation as well. So for that situation, and for 100 years, more than 100 years, people from Asia or Europe try to find the solution. How can we bypass the intermediary country regulation, just in case to have a clean cable? But fortunately, because the cable always need to go through, follow parallel with the equator. So make the sea cable deployment very, very difficult to find a new path. But recently, one thing is changed, especially for climate change. So climate change also changed to our digital world. Because the global warming is causing the Arctic ice to melt. So create a new sea route, potential new sea route, go to the north. So that means the newly open Arctic Sea route is been the feasible path for sea cable to deployment. So Asia Pacific sea cable are able to connect to Europe through the new open Arctic Sea route. That's a new new open sea area. So it wasn't seen before, even 30 years before. But recently, we start to explore that kind of possibility. Luckily, due to the global warming, we have a new route for the sea cable from Asia to Europe. Okay, from this slide, you can understand the cost of the communication. For example, like in the left-hand side, most of the, that's from state. Most of the connectivity in state, basically, that are terrestrial trial. That's terrestrial cable And so basically all the facility is dry plant, is dry facility. And when we're talking about Europe, that's a mix of dry and wet facility. But in Asia, the majority connectivity between Asia country basically goes through sea cable. And that's why the communication in Asia country, especially Asia Pacific country, is extremely high because of the cost from sea cable actually occupy the majority cost of the communication. So especially we only have very poor competition, and everything needs to go through sea cable. So make the communication between Asia country become more vulnerable. So this slide tries to explain what I try to address: security and resilience. They're probably different from commercial security and resilience. And this slide tries to address what is security, what's the security protection, what would be the resilience. So from public policy point of view, for security protection is try to protect something happen, some threat happen within the 2 standard deviation or 3 standard deviation. And we try not to expand over the 3 standard deviation because the cost will be not justified financially. So most likely people, either individual or company or even the government, the security protection is try to protect something happen in the common area within the 3 standard deviation or 3 sigma. So for the protection mechanism in this common threat, could be cyber hygiene and could be ISMS, for example, training, capacity building, or could be cybersecurity tool, for example, like antivirus tool, or you buy the AI tool, any commercial available tool, or even open source available tool. That's what you're trying to do. Everything you're trying to do is to protect within 3 sigma, 3 standard deviation with a risk distribution. What happens if you try to protect the extreme area? That's from public policy point of view. When you try to protect a disaster, and the nature of disaster will be quite different from common security threat. Because the nature of disaster basically is not happen every day. It could be 100 years, happen once. And so that means they have special characteristics. For example, you require emergent management with a limited resource because majority of your resource will pull into the common threat. And I'm pretty sure you don't have adequate resource to allocate for disaster prevention. So whenever disaster happen, always very serious, always very severe from society point of view, from national point of view, always very severe because you don't have adequate resource to mitigate, to protect that kind of disaster. And so you need a rapid assessment for the need and capability. And also you need a very important policy decision to prioritize what will be the selection criterion. And the other key point, what will be the deselection criterion? You are not only select something you try to protect, you also need to abandon something you cannot protect. You need to make a decision what you try to abandon. And also, for usually security goal, you try to make things more running as usual. But for the disaster, actually, it's different goal. You try to survive by yourself with a minimal resource as the primary goal. You try to survive by yourself with limited resources. So that's another policy trilemma or triangle impossible from social science point of view. That means if you have 3 policy goals, and for example, like you have resilience requirement, you have trust requirement, you have control. Control stands for manageability requirement. When you have that kind of 3 policy goals, at most you can only fulfill 2 of the policy goals. You need to abandon the 3rd one. So which one you try to protect, you need to make a decision. For example, if you try to, policy goal is resilience and trust, the public legend technology can be applied, for example, like a blockchain. And if you try to maintain a trust and trying to maintain a manageability or control, make sure everything fulfill quality of service requirement, that probability is a tree structure or star structure like ICANN. And if you try to sustain resilience and try to sustain control, and that probably multiple tree, for example, we probably have multiple root instead of single root in the internet. Let's make sure every country maintain their own route. But one of the disadvantages, that kind of structure doesn't synchronize each other. Okay, so that means when you try to define from national scale or even from global scale, you need to decide what kind of topology you try to approach. And you need to abandon the third policy dilemma. Okay, let's go back to resilience exercise. When you try to resilience exercise, you need to do the supply chain mapping exercise. What is supply chain mapping exercise? For example, I have huge assumption. For example, if a certain economy, certain country that doesn't have a local root instance, the communication flow will be something like this. From any devices, go through DNS resolver. Then the next step will go to C cable, undersea cable, and it goes to the root. My huge assumption just mentioned, there is no local root instance. And go to the root somewhere in the world. Then come back root, give you the answer response. Go to C cable, go to resolver, tell you you need to go to next stage. Next stage will be a DNS registry. So go to C cable again and go to find the registry. Then response to you goes to C cable, told the resolver, say, the domain name will be somewhere in the world. So you go to C cable again and to find the domain name. So you can see a critical element in this diagram. You can see from the supply chain diagram, you can see C cable will be a critical element. And DNS will be critical element. So he's talking about IDN nothing to do with resilient. Actually, it does. Data center will be a key element. BGP routing will be the key element. And I didn't try to bring discussion about the BGP routing because I found there are several discussions in the resilience section in the API-IGF. So every day has a resilience. Definitely we're talking about BGP routing. So, okay, basically that's about critical internet component here. It's different compared to traditional definition for critical information infrastructure because the traditional critical information definition will be machine facility, cable facility, and base station, something like that, or even router or switch. But the definition, you couldn't see anything like that. So that's a supply chain resilience mapping. And just identify several mapping categories I try to map in. For example, from ownership point of view, from manageability point of view, from jurisdiction point of view, from supply chain risk point of view. Supply chain risk means, do you have alternative to that kind of choice? And from cost point of view, in terms of Mandarin, I always say, 免钱的最贵. If you didn't pay for the service, how can you ask for quality of service? So you need to pay attention to some component you didn't pay any penny to them, and how can you ensure they will continue to provide service to you? That was a big gap in the internet governance regime. And also alternative, like, can you find any other alternative? So from that kind of category, I quickly identify from that element, you can see, for example, ownership in the BGP will be ASN, and manageability usually only maintain the outbound traffic. You cannot control the inbound traffic. And for jurisdiction, you only control your ASN. Even another company doesn't have their own ASN. Another company just rely on ISP to route their traffic for them. And also supply chain risk, that's pretty high. And cost, that's OPEX. And also alternative to be decided. Depends on how many routes you have decided pairing with each other. If you just choose one supplier, anything you can rely on a single supplier. And so the rest are doing a similar exercise. And from C cable, I try to particularize here. You can see the ownership. Does anyone have the ownership for the C cable? No, zero. I assume there's zero. Then manageability. Do you have a manageability to C cable? If anything cut in the C cable, can you manage that? No. Oh, okay. Probably William can do that. Okay. And jurisdiction. Do you have any idea about the jurisdiction about the C cable? No. Okay. And supply chain risk is very, very high because it's very limited supplies. And also cost. Did you pay for the C cable? Did you get your telecommunication bill with a C cable charge? Zero. Okay. Alternative. I don't like a joint telecom with a certain particular C cable. Can I change to the C cable? No. Okay. So that become a very, very great vulnerability in the total supply chain mapping exercise from this category. So that's another view from network connectivity and resilience. You can see the connectivity density in different economies. For example, like a state, you have 26,000 network connecting to each other. And Russia, 5,000, India, 2,000, Australia, 1,800, Korea, 700, Ukraine with 1,400, Japan, 800, sorry. Taiwan, only 200. Only 200. Not to mention, only 3 are active connectivity. The rest are just no traffic. Okay, so you can see from this map, you can realize what kind of resilience we try to demonstrate. So Charles is just talking about the gray zone, and for example, like a Ukraine war, and how the World War III could start. It's definitely started from cutting sea cable, starting from there. Why? Because that belongs to the gray zone, according to the UN protocol, UN Convention for Law of Sea, and they declare that undersea cable attack is not hostile act. That means undersea cable can be identified as legitimate military target. If any country, any economy trigger cutting the undersea cable, will not trigger another military response because it's fulfill the requirement for UN Convention for Law of Sea. So cutting cable is free of charge. It's really free. So, sorry if any Chinese here, sorry, just apologize. If China tried to invade Taiwan, disconnection Taiwan from the world by cutting undersea cable will be greatly improve China's chance of succeed. Okay, go to the next page. That's basically cable landing station in Taiwan. The red color stands for traffic distribution in different undersea cable. Oh, sorry, I couldn't put a number here because they're concerned with the national security. And so you can see the red color here. You can use a meter to measure traffic share they have. And also, by cutting of by destroy one of the cable landing station, you can easily to understand how can it disrupt the traffic in Taiwan. And also, there's a report by a lot of news press release talking about China is practicing how to serve Taiwan internet. For example, like a Machu Island that was being cut 2 years ago. Also, from supplier side, we need to identify where will be the supply side from the market and identify significant market player. I'm talking about one example is Huawei Marine Network. They have achieved more than 100 contracts in the sea cable arrangement in the Asia-Pacific region. And the sea cable supplier, you can see a lot of company, quite a lot are from China, basically. Talking about mainland, if sea cable, all the sea cable cut, any happen to the Taiwan internal traffic, basically if all sea cable cut, only 31% traffic available in Taiwan, even domestic traffic, only 31%, because you can see the DNS record, DNS record, majority of them, 71% of them, actually, 69% of them actually using the DNS service outside Taiwan jurisdiction. So if a sea cable cut, sorry, everything goes down, that including the largest e-commerce website in Taiwan, even with the Chinese domain, even with their domain with .tw, still disconnect. Not to mention if your domain extension, the top level domain is .com, .net, .org, or something outside .tw, it's definitely everything gone. So that's another case regarding to domain and resilience. That's happened in the Ukraine war. And during the Ukraine war, and actually the war starting from 27th of February 2022. And within 1 week until the first week of March 2022, all the Ukraine CCTLD moving outside of Ukraine, including in the 6 cities, Berkeley, San Francisco, Santa Clara, and Strasbourg, and somewhere else, Wien and Vienna. So you can see all the country top-level domain, and within 1 week, they move out completely. So when you try to query the domain service, still available because they are almost outside of Ukraine. But still have some key issue, but that will need to be addressed later. For example, like a sovereignty and jurisdiction. and including enforceability of law. If a court order send a seizures warrant for any particular domain, can you exercise that kind of warrant? That's another issue. So any mitigation strategy, and probably I don't have solution, but that's a way, potential way to mitigate that kind of situation. For example, like reduce the vulnerability. And we have a program called Taiwan Bypass, try to attract more foreign investment in the undersea cable. And we try to build more cable landing station and try to promote investment. I was talking about a little bit how to promote investment and reduce time. For example, we can try to deploy three-dimensional infrastructure, for example, from sea to air, from sea to sky. And so also, Charles already mentioned a little bit, self-maintenance capability. Can we able to maintain any sea cable nearby? And also right of innocent passage. And also the third strategy will be increase the difficulty. For example, like a sea cable list as a critical infrastructure. We never have a sea cable list as a critical infrastructure. If any component list into the critical infrastructure, and that will trigger the national protection plan. That means not only the facility owner need to protect the facility, the national army will also protect the facility. And also critical infrastructure resilience, and try to improve the critical infrastructure resilience. And I'll try to regular critical infrastructure protection plan usually just protect within 2 standard deviation, as I mentioned. But right now, we try to expand to 6 standard deviation, try to expand to the severe situation, such as what happened in a great natural disaster, what happened in the wartime. Can we protect with a limited resource? How can we prioritize that kind of protection? Also, Charles mentioned anti-gray zone aggression. And the gray zone aggression is always one of the key topics in the geopolitics. Can we try to deploy anti-gray zone aggression? So another option is go to the sky. Didn't go to the detail. Go to the sky, for example, sky basically just like a remote login. And basically all the communication from here, you need to go through the sky or go to interstellar link and go down to the ground station, then go to the internal network, then the rest will be the same as we do. So you can see the long distance actually to get your local IP address, and they connect to the internet. So just like a remote dial-in. That's a traffic distribution from Starlink. I didn't try to leak out a company secret, sorry. Okay. Also, the most challenging for sky communication actually is not technology. Technology actually is quite mature right now, but the most challenging from legal point of view. The first challenge, the top one, will be the Article 36.5, according to Telecommunication Act, is public telecommunication network should be established by a domestic company. So it can be only owned by the domestic company. So if you are international global satellite communication operator, try to deploy service in Taiwan, sorry, you've got to be a local company. You need to set up a local company. 51% owned by the local shareholder. So that will be the greatest challenge. So we try to review, is it possible to reduce or remove that regulation as well? And the rest is not very critical anyway. But one of critical is Article 3, regulation for the application review of public telecommunication network establishment. Cellular network must establish their own cellular ground station. That also list in the ground station, list in the law. So if any communication didn't have a Taiwan local ground station, sorry, you are unlawful communication. Okay, that's very complicated. I didn't try to go into detail. Anyway, that's an application process. When you try to apply submarine cable, it takes give you a total conclusion is it takes 3 years. And usually the application in different countries probably take 1 year, 2 years, but Taiwan will be the longest time in the world, takes 3 years. And Taiwan need to go through several government agencies. For example, you need to go through Ministry of Culture. What they're trying to do, they try to define the underwater cultural heritage. According to the Under Cultural Heritage Preservation Act, you need to protect our cultural heritage. So that takes about 2 or 1 year. So that's a mitigation strategy. I try to attract more investment, and that has been happening right now. suggestion is try to remove item 2.2, 4.1. That's red color here. Application for undersea cultural heritage survey report. Remove this item. And jurisprudence for the removal is a comparative law legislative reference basis. According to the information intelligence we have, is including Japan, Philippines, Australia, Singapore, that doesn't have that kind of requirement. So we just copy and paste. That's it. Don't try to be smarter. And also, optimize process 2.1, 2.2, 4.2, 4.3. That's somewhere here. That's a lot of internal review, law enforcement agent, a lot of anything regarding to the police station. They're trying to do some monitoring. So the improved process is based on the jurisprudence. Is a principle of administrative efficiency, or that's a jurisprudence. Okay, and midterm and long-term suggestion for improvement is try to promote specialized submarine cable legislation. That means everything needs to be centralized, controlled by a single government entity, so the entity can do a better coordination among different government agencies. So that pretty much cover all my slides. Let me check. Oh, done. Okay, thank you.
Well, very good talk. Yeah, but what surprised me is several of the slides that Kenny Huang presented to the government in the 2015 to our highest position, the president. But I wonder, what are you doing in that last 8 years? You didn't do anything. You didn't improve anything, huh?
That's a national secret.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I remember that it's 2015. He and we go to make a presentation to the high-rank officer and talking about this security issue. I thought about he did something, but seems he didn't do anything yet. Okay, I think we still have 29 minutes. I have a couple questions for Charles and also for Kenny. And then I will leave 20 minutes for all of us on the floor. You can ask a question to them because they are, one of the experts in this kind of the infrastructure in Taiwan, and Okay, the first question actually, Charles, you do mention about several of the kind of the resilient undersea cable, but it's as you say, the Taiwan do not have enough investment in the undersea cable. That I don't know. I know that because if I know, it's only 1 or 2 companies have an investment in the undersea cable, and it's in the old days, it's a kind of a national carrier, But even the national carrier, they're still very tiny, because they only own the share of the undersea cable only for their own communication. But majority is still owned by the foreign company, For you know that once you lay out the cable, is that everybody share the percentage. And as I remember, the national carrier of the Taiwan, the Zhonghua Telco, is all usually just invest about 3%, 4%, It's very tiny, And the majority actually is more like, for example, in this state, like Google or Facebook or some other people's. This means this cable actually require, if you are talking about the property ownership, it's international, it's not by Taiwan, right? So, of course, you raise this undersea cable security issue. I do understand that it's quite vulnerable. But the interesting thing, if somebody damage this undersea cable, actually damage the international property, it's not only damage the Zhonghua Telco's property. This is, it certainly raises the question, it's not domestic problem, it's an international problem, because you damage the Google or Facebook is an American property. And supposedly, U.S. government want to protect their American property, right? Yes or no? Charles or Kenny? Okay, but anyway, okay. But that is a. But you know, the cable is in general is international. It's not owned by the certain peoples, you know. And that is one of the question. And the second question is also interesting. Is about you know, the satellite link. As a Charles say, you know, because we don't know this true or not. The Starlink is not available for Taiwan, and so Taiwan have to build their own satellite link, and all you know, working with the Europeans, you know. And but if we are working by ourselves domestically, it takes a long time, you know. Even we go to the European, as I know, the company actually bankrupt before. You know, it's not very financial stable company, you know. So it's if we are looking for the satellite link to replace for the, you know, in emergency cases to replace, you know, supporting the internet connection, it's still a problem. The problem is a couple of them. It's not really reliable, you know. But I have a you know, very tiny question is as I know that Taiwan actually very close to the Japan territory. The coastal island is only 100 kilometers. Also, it's close to the Philippine island, 100 meters. And I don't know, is there can be a alternative or choice we can do?
Yeah. Sorry. Several. Very good question. I'll try to answer your questions or your comment, right? And stimulate more discussion, I hope, from our audience. First of all, you mentioned about the international nature of the ownership of the cables. That has to do with the traditional fact that many of these cables in the past, maybe up to, you know, the last several years, they were all consortiums formed by telecom companies. So you would naturally, like you build a cable, you pass through many different countries or jurisdictions, and then each incumbent or second or third carriers of those countries would get a share, like you mentioned. Sometimes, you know, some companies may invest more. Some companies might be the Taiwan telecom companies, they invest less, so they only have a few percent. Some companies from, let's say, American or Japanese carriers, they may invest more and then they own a bigger share. But still, it is a consortium. The original concept for many decades in the telecom world is that they work together, so everybody has a stake. So everybody would promote the business, connecting, supplying business to the cable, and these cables are long-term investment, 30, 50 years, and so and or more. So that was the nature of the business. Recent years, as I mentioned, it's changed because telecom companies are not very rich anymore. I mean, they're not the richest companies in the world. Who are the richest companies? The users. I mean, or in the sense that the user of the internet traffic, not the end users like us, okay? But the user of the internet traffic, like such as Meta, Google, cloud companies like AWS, Microsoft, and so on. So they say, why do I use these cables, my international traffic? Why do I have to pay the telecom companies? I have more money. I build my own cable. I own it, right? I'm not going to share it with others, right? Well, they share with each other. Like many of these cables are jointly invested by, let's say, Google or Meta together, or with AWS, and they are not going to sell these traffic to others most of the time, right? So so what I mean is because of the business nature of the internet is changing. we may have to really think out of the box. Who is to say that in future, banks or other major economic players with the capital, or maybe even the VCs themselves, well, maybe not VC, because these are not very high return investment. Okay, forget them. But okay, yeah. But those companies who want to make sure that they have a stake and the stability of using these international traffic would, or even if they see a positive upside in by investing in these infrastructure, it would bring upside to their own business or the economic climate or performance of their own country. So that's why I thought about, the biggest economic player, let's say in Taiwan, you can imagine those semiconductor companies, or maybe in another region, it would be the financial service companies and so on. I'm just thinking out of the box and trying to propose that maybe in future, maybe 10 years from now, you would come and say, what have you done, Kenny? What have you done, Huawei? And then you say, you look at the industry, maybe there will be new investors rather than the ones that we see today. So I'm just saying that maybe that's what we will have to think about. But the nature of these, but you also mentioned about the international nature of the ownerships of these cable. But I think maybe Kenny answered that question a little bit already, because if a cable is damaged, it is like just a piece of private property. So even if it is a cable that is owned by Google or Meta, do you think the U.S. will send in the Navy or whatever to maybe not, right? That's exactly what you are seeing. Well, maybe there's some changes, right? But because more and more countries are raising the dispute to an international diplomatic level. But it seems like they don't have the solution in international laws yet. You look at the situation in the beginning of this year, what happened in the Nordic. It was the cables that were connecting between Estonia, Sweden, and a number of countries in the Nordic region. And then it was obvious that the government were involved in the investigation. But in the end, they accused this particular Chinese ship of making the cut. But there seems like there's very little they can do about it, other than naming and shaming to some degree. So that's my answer to your first question. The second question about the satellite option, I think the most important thing, number one, to think about, to remember, is that satellite cannot replace totally the undersea cable. It's only a backup. Yep. So even in the case of Ukraine, when Starlink provided this, I don't know, somewhat reluctantly or whatever, to Ukraine, because of the at the suggestion or the U.S. government, it does not mean that everyone getting online today in Kiev are using Starlink. Right? They're still relying on the land cables. And fortunately for Ukraine, there's still a substantial border with Western Europe. So the Starlink is mainly used by the government or the military. So if there is this sort of LEO or MEO connectivity in Taiwan during a situation of conflict, you don't expect that Starlink or I mean the LEO and MEO connectivity would be used by the general public. It would be a backup that would primarily, hopefully, be taken or maybe taken over or used by the military or the government, critical, essential functions. So number one. The second issue is the global reliance on Starlink is a global problem, I think. Even I think the US government should not rely too much on someone like Elon Musk. He's too flaky, too difficult. So we don't have to go into that. So what you mentioned about other potential options, coming from, let's say, other investors like the Amazon owner and others, European options, other countries, and so on, is the critical issue. I think not just facing Taiwan, facing the US as well. So I don't exactly know what the solutions is, because right now the problem is the biggest company providing this satellite network is an American company that's not very friendly to the American government, unless it is Donald Trump in office. And also, the Chinese is building its rival network that is supposedly they want it to be even bigger than Starlink. And who are the alternatives? There seem to be very little or too little, too late, the alternatives. So that is the issue. I don't have the answers, but I just want to point out that this is not just a Taiwan issue, it's a global issue.
Before Kenny go on, we have two speak phone here and over here. And if you'd like to ask in the question to the speaker, please go there on the microphone. Kenny, you want to make a comment when the people asking the question, please?
Make
a comment first.
It's okay. I can, because I only have 15 minutes left, so I'm happy to open the floor.
Hi, good morning. Thank you very much on a very complicated topic. My questions might be somewhat simplistic.
Can you introduce your office?
Yeah, my name is Elizabeth Donkofor. I'm with the American Bar Association's Rule of Law Initiative. So my questions are very legal in nature. One, when you were mentioning the direct cables being an option through the Arctic, would that not then be subject to Canadian law? Because Canada, I know, China is claiming to be a near Arctic state, but, as a Canadian, I will tell you, we're the nearest. The second question is, in reflecting upon thinking outside of the box and your criticisms of the heritage and cultural challenges of that approval process, could we not maybe look that way to to start regulating these cables in a manner where countries can claim a degree of ownership because of the public good that these cables provide? I know companies wouldn't like that, and their lobbying efforts would be really hard on that front, but it seems to me that there would be comparable legislation in a lot of different countries that this is providing a public good. It needs to be regulated, it needs to be scrutinized by government. So in fact, this slowdown in Taiwan is something that Australia, Japan, and Korea perhaps should mimic. Thank you.
Thank you. Probably the question is just for me. Okay, for the first question, I agree with you. I think it's yours. It's your jurisdiction. I have no complaint about that. Okay, right. For the second question, yeah, actually you are right. As I mentioned initially, there's a policy trilemma. Actually, when you do one certain policy decision, you probably jeopardize the other section as well. So that's a hard decision. When you make the decision on this kind of particular issues, you got to make a decision whether you want to sacrifice underwater cultural heritage or want to have more cable investment. I think that's a kind of trade-off. But I agree with you. There should be somewhere in between. Try to sustain the underwater cultural heritage and also as well as to stimulate more investment. Could be somewhere in between, but I didn't do the detailed investigation, so could be. Anyway, thank you.
Come in. Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, I say that's belong to Canada.
Are you sure?
Actually, can you quickly tell us an example about underwater cultural heritage? I mean, I'm thinking about Aquaman. What are we talking about?
I'm not expert in this particular area.
Okay, please.
Jonathan Brewer. Okay. I don't think I have a microphone yet. Hello?
Yep.
Hello. Okay. Jonathan Brewer, just representing myself. You seem to be approaching this problem of connectivity for Taiwan from a market perspective, but it's a national defense problem. It's uninvestable. No countries will build new submarine cables to Taiwan. So why isn't the government building new submarine cables from Taiwan to the Philippines to Japan?
Look like a very good question for you, no?
I didn't mention the government will build a submarine cable. Sorry, I probably give it a wrong expression. The government tried to, as I suggested in the public policy, is try to change the regulation to attract more foreign investment or even domestic investment to willing to invest for submarine cable. And for example, like our telecommunication regulation, the specific request only domestic company can build a submarine cable. And so for that kind of requirement can be, if it can be relaxed, can be have a more potential attraction for foreign investors to willing to do that kind of investment in the submarine cable. And definitely there's no intention or no any attraction for any government try to deploy their own submarine cable, especially unless it's for special purpose. I believe there will be.
Okay, but my point is that the problem of connectivity is a problem of national defense for Taiwan. And there is no commercial incentive, even with the best incentives. There's no reason for any commercial company to build another cable to Taiwan, but Taiwan needs the cable. So can you convince the government that they should build their own cable?
No, I didn't convince the government to build their own cable. What I say is that these two different particular regions for national security or government interest versus commercial interest, actually there are certain range overlap. And we try to identify the certain range of overlap from there, especially from relaxing the telecommunication regulation. That could be something commercial needs, and that could be stimulate more investment, and part of that strategy can fulfill part of national security requirement. It doesn't mean government need to invest in the cable. It doesn't make any sense at all, because government doesn't have that kind of capacity to operate the submarine cable at all.
And I think it's actually a very good question in the sense that why are we not thinking out of the box the other direction, right? Rather than thinking about more different industrial players to invest, why are we not thinking about the government itself to do the investment? But the problem is, number one, where do you connect to?
Yep.
You connected to Japan. That means the Japanese government also has to consider investing. Otherwise, would let's say NTT be willing to becoming a partner with Taiwan to own a cable? I don't know. So never happened before, because like traditionally it is privately owned. So I'm not saying that it's impossible, but even if it happens, it would be 1 out of 16 or 17 cables. So how many of these new cables do you need in order to really improve the resilience, right? I don't know. I mean, it's a good question to ask. 10, right? How much money? And like I said, would the other countries be willing to go along with doing it? And if the Japanese government say, well, yeah, good idea, what would NTT say about it? And so on. It's complicated. So anyway, again, that means it might take a long time as well. But I have to say that I don't necessarily agree that there's no commercial incentive to build more cables to Taiwan. I mean, in Taiwan, you have data centers that are owned by Google, Meta, Microsoft, and so on. So there is significant investment in the data centers themselves. So why not cables?
We have two speakers. Professor Guo, you first, and then you will be next.
Okay, thank you. My name is Jason Guo from National Taiwan University. I think this morning we have a very interesting coverage about security and resilience. I have two questions. The first is for Kenny. About you during your presentation, you mentioned about the Taiwan bypass program, and so I would like to learn more about that, how that works. And the second question is for Charles and Kenny, maybe both of you. So it seems that the sea cable are owned by private actors, but it has public good implications, right? So far, all the internet connectivity is building upon the well-functioning of the sea cable, undersea cable system, especially in the Asia-Pacific region, according to Kenny's presentation. So then my question is that, is there any initiative or an organization to coordinate the undersea cable system, or just each firms, operators, they operate their own without any coordination, like the ICANN or APNIC, this type of organization to do the coordination? That's the second question. Thank you.
Wait a minute. can I allow him to get else, and then you answer all the questions? Go ahead, please. Say your name.
Thank you very much. Ken Herman. I'm an independent consultant working in internet governance and cybersecurity. And from a cybersecurity perspective, I noticed that the discussion focused mostly on, or almost entirely on, physical infrastructure and physical infrastructure protection. It seems to me that more likely routes for disruption would be in a more logical way. And I'm wondering if you can express a little bit more on what protection mechanisms are in place, both regionally as well as within the country, on protecting from disruption of telecommunications within the country.
Thank you. We only have 5 minutes and 41 minutes. The two of you going to share it.
Oh, okay, sorry, I forget the first question. What's the first question? Can you repeat again? Oh, okay, just it's already 5 minutes. Taiwan bypass is actually Taiwan government spend the money to build a conduct from North Taiwan to go to South Taiwan. The purpose to provide the Taiwan bypass is to allow the sea cable company, if they have go through the landing station in the north of Taiwan, for example, like a Toten cable landing station, and if they also have branch go to south of Taiwan, and that means the free bypass can allow them to build a terrestrial cable to be a backup of submarine cable. So that's the basic principle for Taiwan bypass. So your second question would be, sorry. Oh, yeah, a lot, quite a lot. Actually, submarine cable need a great coordination, especially you need to identify where your routing path to identify, because the maintenance vessel need to understand where the location is in order to do the afterward maintenance. So there will be well coordination for the submarine cable company. And also there are a lot of international consortial cable and connecting to different countries, different economies. So for the consortial cable, they definitely need to share that kind of information to do the regular operation, including the network monitoring and maintenance as well. And so to go to the third question would be, I'm talking about a little bit about logical risk, logical resilience, because actually the current status, I believe in most of the country, the critical information infrastructure protection only focus on physical infrastructure. For example, like I mentioned, facility, talking about power station, base station, switch location, facility, data center, something like that, because that's easily to be identifiable. But according to the supply chain workflow, you can realize actually the communication need to go through back and forth, go through a lot of components that belong to logical component. Actually, it's not protected by the national information, critical information protection. So we need to also pay attention before the communication really established. We need to identify the potential vulnerability during the communication and identify the key component. And if the component can be manageable, as I mentioned, one of category, manageability. If the component is manageable, we can try to improve its resilience. If the component is not manageable, it's not owned by you, we need to probably seek another alternative. Probably I don't have a right answer, but that's something we need to pay attention, because current all the regulation in different economy only focus on physical infrastructure, even in the listed in the national infrastructure protection plan, but nothing covered to the logical infrastructure. But the things change. For example, like in the regulation in European Union, they start to pay attention in the logical infrastructure. For example, they list NIS2 regulation, they list the DNS registrar as a critical infrastructure provider. They have a legal liability. They need to follow the code, follow the government instruction to comply some of certain requirement to fulfill their legal requirement as well. I think that getting more and more that kind of case to pay more attention on logical requirement as well. Thank you.
Charles, you want to add? Okay. We still have 2 minutes. I can add a little bit. I think Kenny actually, I think one of the last slide he talking about, if you want to talking about this, ocean cable build up, you need to go through all different kind of department. As I mentioned about, actually, Kenny bring this question to the high rank officer in the 2016 already. But I tell you the truth, first of all, they have to understand what the question is. In here, you're talking about, he's making the presentation, might be, most of you understand that, but don't forget the politicians not really understand what you are talking about. It's very difficult to let them understand why this issue is so critical and why this issue is involved in so many different kind of department agency. And when they know, if this issue you want to resolve, you need to go through so many different kind of department agency and the law, well, it will take years to do it, you know. But I think let's give Kenny Huang and Charles Mok a big applause. Thank you very much. And we have a 20 minutes break, and I think the coffee and tea should be outside. And don't forget to coming back.